Good morning and welcome to First Parish Church of Stowe and Acton, FPC to our members and friends, a welcoming spiritual community. My name is Neil Saunders and I serve as chair of the worship committee. First off, I hope everybody is safe and well after yesterday's blizzard, which dumped about 18 inches on most of us, I guess. If this is your first time with us, we welcome you. Our minister is the Reverend Cindy Landrew, who is away from the pulpit today. Our music director is Brad Dumont, and I'm delighted to say that Brad's going to be joined today by his partner, Crystal Morin, so we'll be benefiting from two voices there. Also, we have our welcoming and membership coordinator, Jolene Trotter, and our religious education director, Michelle Coté, and our other staff members who are all listed in the order of service. During the service, feel free to message Jolene with any questions about our programs or email any of the staff after the service. Their emails are on our webpage. We also invite you to check out our webpage for news and information, and you can also sign up there for our newsletter and email alerts. Upcoming events are listed in our order of service, which is available on our website under the Sunday service information. This week, we are online only, but we're hoping that finally we will be back in person and online next Sunday. So please watch the webpage and our FPC announce for the time and location of those services next Sunday. And you can subscribe to FPC Announce on our webpage. After the service, it's our custom to have a coffee hour. And we will do that with breakout groups that will last about 15 minutes. Please join us for conversation and to learn more about FPC. I'm just going to highlight one major announcement this week. That's next Saturday evening at 5:30 p.m. Our new Revival Coffee House will present a streaming concert featuring the Clement Brothers. For more information, check the announcements in the order of service. And now I'd like to introduce and welcome our guest minister, the Reverend Justine Sullivan. She is an interim minister, currently serving our UU congregation in Brunswick, Maine. Justine grew up in Scituate, Massachusetts, and got her start in church life playing and singing at the folk mass on Sunday afternoons at St. Mary's Catholic Church in Scituate Harbor. She found Unitarian Universalism as an adult after many years of being unchurched. Prior to entering the ministry, she worked in high technology and as a social worker and psychotherapist. Justine was ordained as Unitarian Universalist minister in June of 2017 by her home congregation in Northborough, Massachusetts. And she and her wife Dale and dog Callie split their time between Brunswick, Maine and Northborough, Massachusetts. So welcome again, Justine. We're delighted to have you with us today.
We would like to acknowledge that this service is being held by a community that gathers on the stolen traditional lands of the Massachusetts, Nipmuc, Pawtucket, and Wampanoag people. We pay respect to elders who lost their lives in the colonization of this land and recognize that these indigenous tribes are still today facing violations of sovereignty, territory, and water. We also give thanks for the earth we walk upon, the waters, the life-giving plants, and all the earth's creatures, as well as the winds, sun, moon, and stars. We recognize this is just a first step in moving toward right relationship with Native peoples and healing of the earth.
Good morning, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be with you. I was looking forward to being in your beautiful sanctuary, but I guess one of the gifts of the pandemic really is that we know how to pivot when weather makes it impossible for us to travel. So I'm so grateful that even though we had a blizzard yesterday, we're able to be together in worship this morning. I, like so many people from Massachusetts, worked for a time for Digital Equipment Corporation, and I lived not too far from your church for a number of years. And about 35 years ago, I sang with the Stowe Festival Chorus, and we practiced in your parish hall, and I attended coffee houses, and so have a real connection to your church, to that building, and to the congregation. And so it is really a delight to be with you this morning. Our call to worship is by Audre Lorde. You cannot use someone else's fire. You can only use your own. And in order to do that, you must first be willing to believe that you have it. And now Neil will light our chalice. And if you have a chalice at home or a candle and you'd like to join in lighting your own chalice, we would invite you to do that now. And we light our Unitarian Universalist chalice as a symbol of our faith. The flame reminds us of the divine spark that dwells within each of us and connects us to each other and to all of creation.
And now please join us in singing hymn number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come.
Come, yet again come.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. And now join us in reading the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And please join us in reciting and singing our affirmation. From all that dwell below the skies, let words of love and peace arise. Let joyful songs of praise be sung through every land, by every tongue.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Coté, and I'm the Director of Religious Education. And Reverend Justine asked me today if I could talk about memory. So I wanted to share with you a couple of memories from my childhood. But first, I want to tell you about this story, and it's called The Golden Memory Box. And in the story, I'm not going to tell the whole story because it's actually quite a long story. These children are very concerned because they have to move from one place to another, and they're worried that they're going to forget things or that they're not going to have the same experience. And they keep hearing this voice saying, put it in the golden memory box. And throughout their childhood, they keep, every time they have something special happens, they hear these words saying, put it in the golden memory box. Now, the memory box, if there's little ones here, isn't a real box. It's the memory box is your memory and your mind and all the thoughts that you have. And eventually, at one point, something very sad happens, and they start feeling worried and nervous, and now they hear the word saying, open your golden memory box, and they go. And so I thought I'd share a couple memories from my childhood. The first thing I want to share, this is a shell, and if I could physically put something in my memory box, it would be a shell, because my family and I did not have a lot of money when we were growing up, but one thing we did every year was go to the beach. Now, I lived in Nashua, New Hampshire, and we went to Hampton Beach. And as a child, that ride, it seemed so long. It just seemed like it would take forever. And then we would see this water tower. And we're like, oh, it's almost there. And even though we knew that it wasn't the real water tower, because there was a second water tower a few miles down the road, every time we would be, it's not the right water tower. But then we would see the real water tower, and we would be so excited because we knew for real now that we would finally be at that beach house. Now, as a child, I did that trip again. It wasn't very far at all, but in my childhood memory, I remember it being forever. But I also love the memory of that anticipation, of that feeling like it was long, and knowing that we were going to get to this such a special place. And that love of the beach stays with me soon. And this is one of my favorite memories ever, and I might have shared it, but this is a curler. And for those of you that don't know what a curler is, you put it in your hair and you curl. Now, my hair never curled, but ever. It's, as you can tell from looking at it. But I would visit my grandparents, and my grandmother had this little jar called Dippity Doo. And Dippity Doo is kind of like a hair gel from back in the day. And I can see some people remember this. And she would put Dippity Doo in my hair and put curlers in my hair in hopes that somehow or other she would get this to be curly. It never worked. But there was one day, my grandfather, who worked at a bar at night, while she was doing my hair, I said, Pepe, that's the French word for grandfather, can I please put a curler in your hair? And he said yes. So right at the top of his hair, I put a curler. And a few minutes later, he took it out, and there was a perfect curl sticking straight up. And he was going to work, and he took his hat, which he always wore when he went off. It was one, I think it's called a fedora, like one of those, like, those old man hats. And he put it gently over the curl and went to work. And a few hours later, he came home, and the curl wasn't there. And I was like, oh no, Pepe, what happened? He's like, it stayed there the whole time. It must have been my hat. Now, my childhood memory of that is just so strong that my grandfather let me put a curl in his hair, and he went to work and he showed everyone this curl. My adult recognition of that memory, of course, he didn't go to work with a curl up in his hair. He probably smoothed it down, but he let me keep that memory and let me have that memory with him. And to this day, even though I know as an adult he didn't do it, that love, that memory of love that stays with me still continues. And then this is just, anyone who knows me knows I love dogs, and I prayed for a dog my whole life. I prayed and prayed and prayed. I never got one until I was 30, but I did eventually get one. But I have this little collection of dogs. And I know that they are not real dogs, but when as a little girl, these little dogs that I collected and that I still collect now, just gave me that hope that I would someday get a dog. And as an adult, once again, I'm looking back, and those memories are not, of course, a ceramic dog isn't going to mean a real dog in real life. But those are the kinds of things, those are the memories that even as adults, we know that the memory isn't completely accurate, but we hold on to the feelings of the goodness of those places or those things or those actions. And we use those in ways that just comfort us and give us happiness. I know that Reverend Justine also had a memory, and I don't know if you want to share that, Justine.
Well, since you asked, I guess I will. But I love the thought of your grandfather with this big curl on the top of his head. What a lovely story. Well, the story that I shared with Michelle as we were imagining this time for all ages together. I grew up in Scituate. And when my parents were first married and after I was born, they lived in a small house until I was about 5 years old. And the best thing about that house was that in the backyard, there was this giant rock. And it was my aspiration to be able to climb to the top of that rock. And each, I would try, and each spring I would get a little closer. And finally I triumphed. And after many scraped knees and Lord knows how many Band-Aids, I made it to the top of that rock. And then sadly, we moved away, no more rock. Something like 50 years later, I was visiting, and I decided I've just got to see the backyard and see that rock. Well, you know what happened. It wasn't very big at all. It was rather disappointing. But in my mind's eye, I still hold that giant rock, and all the kids would play on it, and we would probably fight over who would be at the top of it. So it's still very large in my memory. And actually, I kind of regret going back and looking at it and seeing how small it was. But as Michelle said, it lives on in my mind as this great, tall place that you could achieve something by climbing to the top of it.
And I think we probably all have memories like that. So I just want to take 1 minute and have you all just close your eyes for a moment and remember one of those memories from your childhood that you would put in your golden memory box, and just reflect on it for a minute. And then we're going to move on. So just take a minute, think of that famous, that wonderful, heart-filled, love-filled, fun-filled memory, and just hold it for yourself for this service. All right. And that is our message for today.
For all the joys, sorrows, and concerns left unspoken this morning, we will hold them in our hearts. So be it. Amen.
May it be so. A couple of weeks ago, we lost a bright light in the world, a gentle spirit, Thich Nhat Hanh. And I offer these words from Thich Nhat Hanh for our meditation, and I would invite you to get comfortable. See if you can sit back, feel your feet on the floor. Let the chair or the couch that you're sitting on hold you. And would you breathe with me in through your nose and out through your mouth? Do that a few times. Whether near or far, whether in person or online, we hold each other in this community of faith. We hold each other in times of joy and in times of sorrow. I offer these words by Thich Nhat Hanh. Peace is present right here and now, in ourselves and in everything we do and see. Every breath we take, every step we take can be filled with peace, joy, and serenity. The question is whether or not we are in touch with it. We need only to be awake, alive in the present moment. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen. Ashe.
We invite you to continue your meditation with us. There'll be several verses of Comfort Me, and feel free to sing, hum, or just listen along.
Comfort me, oh my soul.
Thank you, Brad and Crystal. That was so beautiful. One of my favorite songs from our Teal hymnal. Our reading this morning is entitled That Which Holds All. It's by Nancy Schaefer from her book, Instructions in Joy. Because she wanted everyone to feel included in her prayer, she said right at the beginning several names for the holy. Spirit, she said, Holy One, Mystery, God. But then, thinking these weren't enough ways of addressing that which cannot be fully addressed, she added particularities, saying, Spirit of life, Spirit of love, ancient Holy One, mystery we will not ever fully know. Gracious God, and also Spirit of this earth, God of Sarah, Gaia, thou. And then, tongue loosened, she fell to naming superlatives as well. Most creative one, greatest source, closest hope, even though superlatives for the sacred seemed to her probably redundant. But then she couldn't stop. One who made the stars, she said, although she knew technically a number of those present didn't believe the stars had been made by anyone or a thing, but just luckily happened. One who is an entire ocean of compassion, she said, and no one laughed. That which has been present since before the beginning, she said, and the room was silent. Then, although she hadn't imagined it this way, others began to offer names. Peace, said one. One my mother knew, said another. Ancestor, said a third. Wind, rain, breath, said one near the back. Refuge, that which holds all. A child said water. Someone said Kuan Yin, then womb, witness, great kindness, great eagle, eternal stillness. And then there wasn't any need to say the things she thought would be important to say, and everyone sat hushed until someone said, Amen. This ends our reading.
This is the moment in our service where we share our gifts. This month, we are sharing our weekly offering with Ria House, Ready, Inspire, Act. It's a nonprofit organization that supports and stands with women across Massachusetts victimized by sex trafficking. You can donate online, by text, or through the mail. And there's more details in the chat about how you can do that. And I'll let Brad tell us about the music that's going to accompany our offertory today.
Thanks, Neil. Today's offertory is different than published. Crystal and I will be offering an Arabic chant, Adinu. The text for this translates to, I follow the religion of love wherever love is found, for love is my religion and my faith. Adinu bidinil hubbi anna tawajat rakaibu falhub dini wa imani adinu bidinil hub anna tawajat
ركايبوب فالحب ديني وإيماني أدين بدين الحب أنتواشت ركائب فالحب ديني وإيماني.
Wow, thank you. Why would you ever leave your house if you can make music like that together? So beautiful. You pray for me, and I'll pray for you. Cada dia, I said. Yes, every day, she said. Answering her English words to me in Spanish, even my limited Spanish somehow made our promise to each other seem more solemn, more serious, more binding. She reached into her bag and pulled out her business card. It was full color with a beautiful photograph of her, Spanish on one side, English on the other. It said, beauty consultant, hair, nails, makeup. The only thing missing was high priestess. That's who she was to her family and to me. I met Iris, I'll call her Iris, on the night her sister died. I was the chaplain on call working the overnight shift. Around 10:30, I was summoned to the room of a patient, I'll call her Carla. The message on the pager said, please come. Patient transitioning to comfort measures only. Family here, requesting prayers. A quick look in the system told me that Carla and her family were Catholic. Carla had struggled mightily for many months against cancer, and all treatment options having been exhausted, she did not want heroic measures. When the family was ready, the machines would be switched off and Carla would expire. My job as chaplain would be to offer prayers and to help them say goodbye. Now, when I first interviewed for the chaplaincy training program at the hospital, the supervisor mentioned that people from many faiths and backgrounds came to this hospital for treatment. How would I feel, she asked, about being an interfaith chaplain? I smiled, perhaps a bit too confidently, but this was an interview. As a Unitarian Universalist, I said, pretty much every interaction is interfaith. She smiled at that, and I knew I was in. When my turn came at the morning chaplaincy meeting to share a sacred text, I offered the reading that I just shared with you, that which holds all, a prayer invoking some of the many names for the holy. One of my colleagues in this training program, a Catholic priest from Nigeria, was so taken with the reading that he asked me for a copy. Later that week, when he led a worship service in the hospital chapel, he offered some of those different names for the holy, along with his own, God the Father. I was so glad to be in this program, the only Unitarian Universalist, and here I was having an impact on my colleagues, even on a Catholic priest. What I couldn't have known at this point was how deep and lasting an impact my time there would have on me. There's a wonderful book called How to Be a Perfect Stranger, and it's full of tips about how to behave when you attend a worship service in a faith tradition other than your own. I had read that book and I was ready to be a perfect stranger with Buddhists and Hindus and Muslims, Jews, evangelical Christians, and agnostics. And I had wonderful experiences with people from every faith background, but the Catholic patients challenged and changed me the most, I think. I entered Carla's hospital room. There must have been 20 people there, obviously, before COVID. Speaking quietly in Spanish to each other, Carla's son greeted me in English, as did his son, a teenager, trying to keep from crying, but obviously quite sad, as everyone was. There were brothers and sisters, nieces and nephews, cousins, godchildren, and aunties, older women who called her Carlita as they smoothed her hair and kissed her forehead. Carla looked younger than her 62 years, lying in her bed, eyes closed, a breathing tube in her mouth, IVs in both arms, the rhythmic sound of the ventilator punctuating the quiet. I'd like to say she looked peaceful, and I hope and pray that she did feel peace that night. But there is something jarring about seeing a person connected to a machine doing the breathing for her. Something so primitive, so innate, the first thing we do and the last, breathing. There was a woman in the hallway wearing a surgical mask, again, before COVID, of course. She had some kind of immune system, she'd had bone marrow treatment that left her with a compromised immune system, and she was told to stay away from crowds, and I imagine places with a lot of sick people, like a hospital, but there she was. Who was this woman, I wondered, that so many people, young and old, would drop everything to come to this hospital late at night to say goodbye to her? And then there was Iris. She was the person they'd been waiting for. As soon as she got word that her sister was dying, she'd hopped on a plane to where her sister was. Iris greeted me warmly. She accepted my condolences and then said in a mixture of Spanish and English, "I am a minister too in my community, Catholic." This part she said with a bit of apprehension. Would I accept her as a minister? Would I see her as part of some renegade Catholic group that allowed women to serve as ministers outside of church teachings? And I thought, boy, you sure got the right chaplain, a Unitarian Universalist who comes from a long line of renegades. "I don't know the prayers in English," she said. "That's okay, I'll pray in English and you can pray in Spanish." She pulled out a small metal box that held the communion wafer. She asked the question with her eyes, "Could I?" "Por supuesto." "Of course," I said. The sun signaled that we could begin. I started, as I almost always do with Catholic families, with the Lord's Prayer. Only no one said it with me. Were the younger English-speaking folks not religious? I finished the Lord's Prayer and then added a personal prayer of comfort, of gratitude for the life of this woman, for the love in this room. And I offered a blessing for Carla, my hand on her shoulder. I remembered my own experience growing up in the Catholic Church. As a young child, I loved being there, the mystery, the ritual, sacred space. And then as I grew older and I started listening to the words, I found I couldn't stay. I couldn't say words I didn't believe in. I left at about age 13, just after I made confirmation, and then was unchurched for many years. And I was angry. I would rail against the teachings of the church, the positions they took on the ordination of women, on reproductive health. But my heart was breaking. I missed the ritual and the sense of connection to the holy in community. I found other spiritual practices, but I missed church. Back in Carla's hospital room, Iris began her prayers. And the family, her congregation, joined in, every one of them praying as Iris led them. There was a beautiful rhythm to the prayers, and I found myself joining in at times quietly when I heard a word I knew, like a child almost, intoning along with the others on vowel sounds, saying the prayers phonetically without understanding the words. And then I realized, in a way I never had before, it wasn't about the words. I could have stopped one of the people in their prayers and asked them what the words meant, and perhaps they could have told me, but I'm sure they would have found the question odd. It wasn't about the words. It was about community, about sending their loved one home to God, with all of them surrounding her with love. Iris blessed the communion wafer and touched it to Carla's lips. The Eucharist would be the last thing Carla ever tasted. And then Iris offered a sign of peace, and suddenly everyone was hugging and kissing each other and kissing Carla, and they even hugged and kissed me, saying, "Paz," peace. One of the most extraordinary things among so many was that each time that I looked up at either the son or the brother, they mouthed the words, "Thank you." I was puzzled by this. It seemed unnecessary, and I was curious. And then the nurse came in somewhere in the midst of all the hugging and kissing. She looked around the room, which now fell silent. "Is the chaplain here?" I waved to indicate my presence. "Oh, okay," she said, and then left the room, and the hugging and crying and the paz and lo siento continued. And then I understood why they were thanking me. My presence there authorized their gathering, their way of being in this moment. My job was to show up and hold the space for them. They were grateful, I realized, because I honored their way of being without trying to change it or control it. And I did truly honor their way of being, their beautiful Catholic way of being. For many years, I had carried around a lot of anger about my time in the Catholic Church, anger about having to leave it, about not finding a home there. And like so many of you who have found your way to Unitarian Universalism from another faith tradition, I arrived grateful to have found a place where I could bring my whole self. But did I bring my whole self? I brought my gay self, my feminist, liberal self, my angry at the Catholic Church self. But as I have looked at that anger and realized how tiring it was to hold on to it, and as I have worked to let it go, I realized that underneath that anger was grief and longing and woundedness. As Rumi tells us, the wound is the place where the light enters. That is where the openings are, but only if we let go of what is keeping our hearts closed. The anger protects us from grief, but it also closes us to longing and love. Now, I'm not returning to the Catholic Church. I am a Unitarian Universalist. This is where I belong. But there is part of me that is still connected to that earliest part of my faith journey, a part of me that is still Catholic. What part of yourself might you be leaving outside the door when you enter here? Those of you who have come out of other faiths, can you risk bringing not only your anger at the rejection you may have experienced, though of course there is room for that, but also your grief and your longing Might there be room here for you to bring what you love about the faith of your youth and trust that you and what you love will be welcome here? Now, within our Unitarian Universalist congregations, we have many folks who have come from other faith traditions, but we also have many lifelong UUs, maybe some in this congregation, people who were raised in this faith. And you might think that this message today is not for you, but I disagree. I'll bet there is a practice, a prayer, a song from your childhood that you miss, or some other part of your spiritual identity that you leave outside when you enter here. Might there be room here for you to bring what you love about the faith of your youth and trust that you and what you love will be welcomed? A dear friend and colleague of mine was raised Unitarian Universalist, and when she was a girl, the song "For the Beauty of the Earth" was one that they sang a lot, and she loved it. It fit with her spirit of gratitude and her connection to the earth. Then she went off to college, and when she returned, everyone was singing this new song, Spirit of Life. She hated that. Not so much the song, but she hated the change. Can you relate to that? Hating the change, the move away from what had been one of her favorites. We all bring stories from our past with us as we enter new spaces. Some of those stories include pain, and that pain can keep us from being truly present to what is here before us right now. Stories tell us how things ought to be or ought not to be. Those of you, for example, who grew up in perhaps a very humanist Unitarian Universalist congregation might reject any mention of God or God language, even in songs, unless they're in Latin. Then it's okay. But what if we were to open ourselves to the larger universal lessons and meanings of sacred texts and songs across many religious traditions, even Christianity? Imagine what gifts might we find there. Come, come, whoever you are, with all of who you are, the joy and the sorrow, the anger and the grief, the blessing and the wound. The wound is the place where the light enters. I arrived at that hospital kind of smug about my ability to be an interfaith chaplain. I could be a perfect stranger. I could love my neighbor as myself. More importantly, could I love my neighbors as themselves? See them as they are, connected to a faith that did not work for me, but still be able to see the beauty in the faith that they love. The prayers offered, the blessings given. Carla died surrounded by people who loved her, led by Iris, their priest. I found myself wanting a blessing from Iris for my ministry, but of course I couldn't ask for that. I was the chaplain, the one with the authority, and I'd already been blessed by Iris and Carla and this beautiful family connected by love and faith. And then Iris, perhaps sensing my desire, said, "You pray for me and I will pray for you." Cada dia, I said. "Yes, every day," she answered. She blessed me with her presence and I blessed her with mine. And it wasn't about the words. May it be so. Come, let us sing together our closing hymn, "We Would Be One."
We would be one. cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other, to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow, a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
Beloveds, may we go forth from this moment into our day, and may you go forth into your day, knowing that you are held in the larger embrace of that divine spark that connects us to each other and to all of creation. Go forth knowing that who you are and all of who you are is enough, is blessed, and is loved. May it be so. Amen.
Please join us in our sung benediction, immediately followed by our postlude. Peace be with you till we meet again. As life lays its task before you, keep love's banner floating o'er you. Peace be with you till we meet again.
Thank you, Reverend Justine, for such a lovely service. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as Ingrid and I did. Special thanks too to Brad, who made a lot of last-minute adjustments. Did a fabulous job. And to Crystal, it was wonderful to have you make music together, such lovely music. And to Kim at our Zoom controls, and to everyone who joined us today.